Bonsoir tout le monde. Re-bienvenue.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. It's been 24 hours since we saw you last. Before we begin our budgetary deliberations, I have a quick presentation to make. I forgot last evening, and so I wanted to come back to that this evening. This weekend was the Francophone Municipalities Conference, and one of the things that they're doing since the end of the pandemic with the municipal reform is doing recognition for years of service for people. Last year I was recognized. I'm thinking of Patricia and Councillor Germain. But there's another one here who also has also hit a certain magic number. That's Councillor Bielero. 10 years of service for your municipality. So we want to have a round of applause for you. So sorry, this part's inaudible. Microphone's not on, so you would ask them to turn the microphone on, but it's about recognizing years of service for this councillor.
Attends, on se reculait, là. Anyway, oui, ben. So. Je sais. Une petite chose à reconnaître, comme je dis, je voulais le faire durant la réunion hier soir, mais...
We wanted to do this during yesterday's meeting, but I lost track of it, and so we did it. Now, this evening is our budgetary session, at least our first one. There's going to be 3 hours. We're going to be ending at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock sharp. At 8:55, somebody is going to say meeting adjourned. Now, I would ask for your indulgence. This is the first time for our Director of Finance and also first time for our Town Manager. Last year was 2 different people, so we want to let them, give them time to get into the swing of things. These folks that may not have had that much opportunity to do this. So same thing as yesterday. Please turn your phones off and put them away. Let's focus on the meeting. Now, our town manager, would you like to speak? I'd like to specify that we have our director of communications who created the presentation as well, so that you will be seeing. Just wanted to make a few remarks to set the table, and then I would ask the Director of Finance to give you the presentation as such. But I'd like to begin by saying thank you to the management team for your efforts in preparing these draft budgets. And everyone else who's been involved. Also, want to thank the members of the council for your patience, the time that you're all taking to familiarize yourselves with our new duties. A lot of things have changed in Shediac for a few weeks. Record growth in terms of residential development, also commercial development, reform of local governance, which has led to certain communities joining Shediac, which has increased our population by 30%. beyond the growth rate. Now we have 13 councillors. The renewal of the management team almost entirely. 5 out of 6 have turned over over the past year. These changes have led to a number of challenges, but I would prefer to call them opportunities. These new ideas brought in by members of the council and the administration and the members of the public were requests for new services, facilities, and renewed infrastructure, such as a new recreational center, a new fire station, new water and sewer services, have required us to hire new people and to find offices in which to work, and additional investments as well. The increase in the tax base of the new town of Shediac puts this, that gives us a 20% increase, which represents 3.2 million in additional revenues. However, we very much need these additional resources in order to invest in all these opportunities that I mentioned. Also, the 4 communities that joined Shediac are still paying the same tax rate as before, but they want and deserve to obtain the additional services that the city will provide them. But these additional services will be provided at a modest cost. The administration has considered various scenarios for the tax work for 2024. For that is the tax rates for 2024. And our recommendation is to keep the tax rate of the former town, the tax rates as the same as in 2023, but increase their tax rates by 5 cents per dollar of valuation, so assessment or appraisal. So that means that the property tax rate would increase by $150 over 2023. This measure will enable them to contribute approximately $320,000 to the shared expenses, which are 13 million on a total proposed budget of 1.5 million. The proposed expenses are as a function of the revenues. So if the tax rates are adjusted, and that is your right as councillors, then we will also have to adjust the expenses accordingly to reflect those changes. Each 1 cent of taxes to the old town represents $115,000, and each 1 cent in the new sectors represents $64,000. The draft budgets that we will present during these deliberations are based on the recommendations of the management team, but it is important to understand that that it is up to the council to have the last word. You are the decision makers, and we will respect your decision at the end of the deliberations. That said, I think we can go on to the presentation. Maybe I just want to present the highlights, and then Carole will present the details. We're talking about an increase in the tax base of 20%, which means about $3.2 million in additional revenues if everything remains the same. Mutatis, but that was an increase, will cause a decrease in the equivalent in the payments from the province. In the draft budgets, you'll see that we're proposing 5 new positions, 2 in public works and 3 in community life. We'll explain that shortly. The reform has also led to increases in the expenses that we're spending on the new Southeast Commission. That also, they have new mandates, which includes costs that have to be supported by the 13 municipalities that are members of that commission. So that means $71,000 more per year. There are necessary investments in terms of facilities and infrastructure, as I mentioned some of them, and you will see more in the presentation, which has a lot to get. We have a lot of things to present. And as I said, for each cent in the decreased in the former territory, this represents about $105,000. And for each cent decrease in the new areas, it represents $64,000. These are key figures to keep in mind when you want to add and subtract certain things. that will have an impact on the expenses as well, the spending. So impact on revenues will have an impact on spending. So this, with this, we will now give the floor to Carole. We have grouped revenues and expenses by department, and we will explain the difference when you compare 2023 to 2024. You will see the difference and what this difference means. And also, I would encourage the council for pages, and I would ask you to please give her the time to go through the entire presentation. Keep your questions until the end, and we're here till 9 o'clock, so we can answer your questions all along the way. So, Carole, over to you for now. So now Carole will give her presentation, and it should answer quite a few questions as well, and perhaps raise a few more. So let's hear her first. Ms. Laneuville. Questions later. Let's let Carole speak first. All right, let's let Carole go through her slides, okay? Good. Yes, that's what Carole is going to do.
OK. Si on commence
Fine.
par les revenus,
We'll begin with revenues.
Le mandat a été
The mandate
les calculs d'assiette fiscale que nous avons
is based on the calculations of the tax base. This gives us in revenues of total revenues of over $19 million. $19,700,000 mandate. We have the gap between the budgets of 2023 and 2024. We're talking about an increase in 3.5 million, which is 21.72%. The 20% of increase, initial increase, 1.72 come from an increase in new areas, newly incorporated areas. That explains the difference in revenues. You're talking about the column on the bottom right, right? Then, for the unconditional subsidy, that comes from the province, and we can't really question that. We had already discussed that before. As to revenues, the administration, we have a small decrease. These are estimates. These are not, it is not a gap or a change or a difference, which is really debatable. It's what these are monies we might get more than we estimated. As for the fire revenues, we have a difference of 6,829. Then we have a difference in terms of transport. We have one public works salary. It's not part of transport, but there's people who are working for the water service, water department. So we're going to have an expense in the budget, but that becomes revenue for the general fund. And that's 3%, which is an increase, expected increase for salaries. Then we have installations, facilities, and recreation, right? The difference, the gap, is 35,750. We have a surplus of 35,000, which we had planned many more activities in terms of facilities and recreation. So that is additional revenues we expect to receive. Up next,
On a mis un 5 500 de moins.
We have 5,500 difference for community services and tourism in the other direction.
Période qu'on va devoir faire, le temps va être écourté facilement d'un mois dû à
There'll be
d'autres choses
1
qui se produisent.
month
Donc,
less because of other things that are going to happen. So we're talking about
à cet endroit-là.
$5,500 less revenue.
Au niveau des finances,
Finances.
nous avons une
Here,
diminution. Mais dans le fond, c'est un écart entre le budget 2024 et 2023.
this is the difference between the two budgets, the 2 years budgets, but it is the surplus of 2022, which we have to acknowledge on our books this year. So last year, budget was bigger because the surplus that we were supposed to recognize was much higher. We then go on to LSDs. The LSDs, these are surpluses, which we have to recognize, and these amounts were recognized. You don't have them on your initial document because I got the figures at the last minute, so I put them as a surplus here. Just to clarify that. And so the total gap between the 2 years budgets is 3.1 million.
Parfait.
Fine. That is the revenue section. We now go on to expenses. And the way I created the budget, the presentation is by accounting department, because there are departments where it didn't make sense to give it to you line by line of all their expenses, because there are a lot of expenses where the gap wasn't justifiable. There was no gap. So I decided to simply present to the one line per department, and if at the end you want to get into certain of these sections in more detail, we can do that. But for the time being, if we look at each department, the gaps or changes that we see between 2024 and 2023 are, as I will explain. So, and if my answer, the explanation that I give you isn't satisfactory, we can then break it down, get into further details once I'm done. Because probably most of my explanations will answer most of your questions once you get a sense of how these figures were determined. So let us begin with the first line, which is legislation. Legislative services, we have a difference of 39,000. We budgeted for an increase of 4%. That's what creates that 39,000. Now, for administration and human resources, next line, we have a total difference of 219,000. The main reason for this is, well, we have 206,000 in the budget for the overhaul of the website, 100,000, and then we also have the rental of the second floor, which is another 100,000. And then we have
les subventions au niveau de l'administration ont augmenté de 15 000 $.
Now, as for administration, that has increased by 15,000. That explains the 219,000 when you add it all up. We now go on to the next line. Police department. The difference is 67,500, which is explained. Well, that's the RCMP contract. We had estimated a 2.5% increase, but we don't have the actual figures yet.
On a augmenté de 2,5%. Au niveau de la brigade d'incendie, Nous avons
In terms of the fire brigade, we have a reduction of 18 some thousand. So
au niveau des équipements,
in terms of equipment, in 2023, there was a budget that was put there for costly equipment. So the equipment that is requested now
a diminué de 30 000 $. Puis ensuite, on a des réparations de camions pour 5 000 $. Puis on a l'augmentation salariale qui représente 9,5 000. Fait que ça équivaut aux 18 700 d'écart. Par la suite, au niveau du...
So afterwards, for protection services, we have a gap of 10,000. That's an amount that we put in the budget. We want to update our emergency plan. That's the 10,000 we had planned for doing the update. In terms of transportation, the gap is $972 some thousand.
Ça, c'est bon, hein? Au niveau de...
In terms of
au niveau de l'administration, au niveau
administration for transportation, we have an amount of $300 some thousand that was budgeted for the transportation plan and runoff equipment for rain and sewage. And then we have wages, and we had a position of a superintendent. That's 100,000. So engineering for the also GIS company 50,000, and that explains the gap between 23-24.
Au niveau des équipements,
in terms of equipment and public equipment, we have a 43,000 gap, and that's based on the buying more equipment with adding of a second mechanic, because we want to hire a second mechanic, which will create more work. So purchasing equipment with this with the addition of a mechanic afterwards. In terms of the municipal, we have an increase of 22 some thousand. That represents the equipment of the addition of a small tools. We have insurance, an increase $6,000. We don't have that particular page, and some building repair as well. Same department for transportation. We have roads and streets, 100 grand for repairs for sidewalks. We've included and increased the budget for improving sidewalks and patching streets. So for street lighting and throughout the presentation, everything that pertains to electricity, we've increased the budget by 2%. That increase represents an additional $4,000. In terms of public services, we increased $20,000 for street planning, and that's what from the agreement we had. In terms of wages, we've added a mechanic, an operator, that's 155,000, and also a salary increase another 22,000 So for bigger amount, the interpreters don't have this one. I've added 3% for wage increase, which is based on the collective agreement that we have now. So in terms of hygiene, we have a gap of 21,554, and that comes from, in terms of removing solid waste, based on contracts, an increase of $14,000, and also the landfill, and that's an increase there from the commission. The Southeast Regional Service Commission, and that creates that increase as well. In terms of planning, urban planning, I put we have an increase of 60,838. That comes from the Regional Service Commission. In terms of economic development, a gap of 493,554. That gap is justified by commercial and residential incentive that was increased. And in terms of wages, there's a person that's moving departments, and so we have to adjust the wage accordingly. I put 100 grand wage. Provincial services increase, industrial park increased by 20,000. And then we go to installation and recreation facilities. So 821,360 increase. The first here is Rotary Park. We've put $20,000 budget to replace benches there. We want to add electric panels, 7,000. Taxes of 85,000, which was not included in 2023. That's property tax, and we've kept the for property tax for $85,000, and that's the Omerus Center. But further on in the budget, we did not added revenue for the rent for Omerus Center. So the revenue, we don't want to create Omerus revenue at Omerus Center. So what would be for rent? We'd have to pay back at some point, so it would be a zero sum. So that's why I removed the revenue from the rent for Omerus Center. And then in the downtown, we've put $30,000 to set up the for marsouin for didn't get the animal species there. In terms of wages, we've increased. There's a gap of 100,000 that we've added 41,000 for the arena. So there is public works, and that created when it was the arena per se. Sometimes we had problems enough we could lose our place there. We didn't want this anymore, so we thought it'd be better if we on call at the arena, if there's a problem strictly at the arena. We've all added 2 new employees, which would be 130 grand increase as well. So we have the multifunctional center that's explained. We need to change the separating walls. with those panels, and that's 120 grand cost. We want to update some equipment, 12,000. We want to buy a machine to clean the floors, 5,000. So we've added 19,000 for events. We'll have to increase the events, the expenses for the multifunctional center. And we've added employees for 53,000. So with the old train station, 5,000 some dollars. We're adding electric panels. So for events to make it more functional. We're not sure where she is because we don't have the same text at the arena. An increase of 68 some thousand. We're supposed to redo the floor, 50,000, and improving the ice manufacturing. And terms for green meals, 43 some thousand. We want to buy an additional trailer, 11,000. It's hard for the interpreters to follow her because we don't have the same text there. Adding trails as well. So soccer, a gap of 64,000. We've adding protection nets. We want to buy a power rake of 21,000. Another item, we missed the number. For parks, trails, pickleball, we have a gap of 52,000. We've put 25,000 for shelters at Pascal Poirier, buying waste bins, and for bike supports, additional 20,000. And to add something, another amount of, can get the number for the pickleball field. In terms of other expenses, recreational, a gap 23,700. And that's overall for engineering. For season, a multi-sport surface, a kitchen and so on, recreational center. So all this explains the gaps that we had for installation and recreation. Let's go to community services and tourism. So an increase of wages. We're going to decrease. We'll try to find that again. In terms of tourism, that's where the Umar Center rent was there, so that there's a decrease there. It represents 73 some thousand. In terms of publicity promotion, a gap of 60 some thousand. Increase community activities. So there's $56,000 caps. We should check the check of the activities, community activities that you've received.
Excusez, je veux juste être certaine que j'ai la bonne.
She wants to make sure she's on the right spot, if I understand correctly.
L'écart de 55 000 au niveau de la liste des activités communautaires, la principale.
The main difference for community activities, the main difference is the Lobster Festival.
L'année dernière, on avait comme
Last year, we had 25,000, and now we have 75,000. That's the main difference. Comes from the Lobster Festival.
Nous avons aussi le Moncton River Pride qui est arrivé.
The Pride.
L'activité, on a ajouté le hockey garçon.
We've added the boys hockey from LGR, which explains the difference. We're not sure where on which page she is from what they've sent, so doing our best.
Par la suite, nous avons au niveau des activités événements spéciaux.
In terms of events, special events, we have an increase of $86,000, explained by
au niveau du tourisme new event.
Tourism new event. We have Sunday market increase of 25. $7,000 for the Big Lobster. There'll be a float, carnival float, summer camp. We've added $5,000 for new programming for the adolescents. And for volunteers, we've added $5,000.
Au niveau des activités culturelles,
cultural activities,
au niveau de la
no.
réanimation,
So
nous voulons ajouter un deuxième poste qui représente
we want to add a second section. This is for reanimation, 15,000, and will increase students' salaries by miss the amount. In terms of cultural activities, we have an increase, 35,000. We have that 25,000 explained by the Eloise. Eloise. That's the Eloise prize.
Et nous avons mis un 15 000
We put 15,000 to add for a youth square or something like that. So that explains part of the gap here for community service tourism. In terms of LSDs, in that section, we have a reduction of 5,896.
Non, OK, c'est passé loin, là, mais c'est
non, ben c'est 5,951.
Nous avons diminué, dans le fond.
We've reduced.
Nous avons diminué la subvention.
We've reduced the grant for emergency measures. We've included it in the emergency plan that we've already covered. And that's a shared cost, so it shouldn't be strict to the LSDs. And we've reduced that amount.
Nous avons au niveau de centre communautaire de la Pointe-du-Chêne.
With the community center in Pointe-du-Chêne, we increased the budget by $3,800 as just an estimate. And I sent emails, and we haven't met the board yet.
Leur budget. Je me sentais plus sécure d'augmenter, parce que je sais que
I increased their budget by
coût d'assurance
some-
augmente.
The insurance cost is increasing,
Je voulais pas qu'ils soient mal pris non plus parce que
so they didn't want them to wind up short.
de se respecter à ça puis que ça
I didn't want them to wind up short,
pas les augmentations.
and it wouldn't cover
Pas à l'aise de
the
dire, ben non,
increase.
c'est le même budget que l'année
So
passée.
no, they should have the same budget to cover that as last year.
De ce côté-là. On ne veut pas leur causer une réduction de leur service. Je veux dire.
Non,
We don't want them
c'est pas-
to have to cut down on services. That wasn't the idea.
Ça coûte trop plus cher, les assurances coûtent trop plus cher.
Electricity is rising, insurance costs are going up,
On tombe à la section des finances, que nous
Then we go
avons
into
une
finance.
réduction budgétaire.
where we have a reduction.
C'est expliqué. Dans le fond, c'est le service de la dette, c'est nos débentures, c'est la différence, nos intérêts sur emprunt qui sont moins élevés.
No, our interest on debentures is lower, 50,000.
7 000, mais c'est
97,000 is the debt declining because we didn't borrow. We're being able to pay down our loans on debentures, so we have a decrease. We don't have any new loans that we have to pay down in 2024 because we didn't go to the loans board to borrow in 2023. So our debt has not increased. In fact, it has gone the other way. Capital paid by general funds. We have a decrease. Sorry, we have an increase. 581,000. Now, we can look at that. You can see the document, not that one. This is capital paid by the general fund, capital projects. Right, but we received the document anyway. The difference of 581,000. 10. Right, 581,000.
C'est ça, les projets spéciaux du conseil.
Special projects.
Diminuer le budget de 100 000 $.
We decreased it by 100,000.
C'est quoi qui cause la plus grosse différence?
What else is the big tickets here?
Je choisis Shediac qui a été retiré.
I choose Shediac was removed.
Ensuite, au niveau du centre-ville, la contribution est
Downtown, our contribution is the same as in 2023. No change there.
Nous avons mis un 130 000 $ pour des camions d'une tonne pour le département de
31
récréation.
For half-ton truck for the recreation department.
Les équipements qui étaient demandés en
The equipment that was requested in 2023, we didn't renew that. This is for public works. We had that came in 2023. We don't have it in 2024. The beautification project, we moved it. Youth infrastructure moved to server update has been done. In terms of new sidewalks, we increased the budget by 150,000. Baseball field, 46,000 lower versus 2023. Website. It's already in the budget, so it's no longer a special project. We also removed the Pascal Poirier. We added $25,000 for the Maison Pascal Poirier to do a feasibility study. And we have $325,000 for renovation of the second floor of the City Hall. And we also have engineering projects for 2025, where we have to start the projects before we can go any further. If we want projects to be ongoing in 2025, the engineering fees have to begin in 2024. So we have a budget for $80,000 for that. And for the multi-sports area, we have also a budget for that. That leads us to the end of that, and then we have reserves. We have 200,000 budgeted for 2024 for costs. The council had requested us to put in 200,000 in the reserve fund for economic development. So that 200,000 has been put into the budget again. Last year we had 471,000. So now we only have the reserve fund for economic development. Which means that the reserve is brought to 471,000 with this addition. A budget gap, a decrease of 218,000 because we had only retained 200,000 for both. The reserve fund has over $2 million. It's in good shape. I also want to add, Carol, there is a surplus that we identified as a reserve fund for the general operating fund of 121,000. So we have a bit of leeway to make adjustments to what has been presented. We want to respect the council's decision to invest 200,000 every year into the general capital, the general fund, but there's also 100 every year, but there's also 121,000 for the operating fund. Because for the last few years, we've always been investing 200,000 for the economic development year after year. Those funds have not yet been used. They're still there. So this is for initiatives when initiatives become necessary. When we have to, if we want to purchase land, for example. And that covers that, huh? Okay, great. Well, that gives us a lot. I know you have questions. I've written down a few, highlighted a few things on my iPad, had some ideas in my head, and I'm sure you have some too, some questions. So let's get to it. Because we have grants and capital projects to look at, but we're going to look at the operating budget first. Let's eat the apple before we move on to the orange. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Paul Boudreau. I want to congratulate you, first of all. Excellent work. I like the right-hand column. Gives us a good idea of how things have changed. We could, I hope that the other members of the council will put in their wish list, and that the administration will look at this. But I want to look at the water access project. Did the if the administration explored that or decided to invest money in that if we ever go to a call for tender? That's my question to the administration. Is it a yes or no? Maybe for next year, the year after that. I also find it a bit disappointing that we had a nice presentation from Julie yesterday. Ball hockey, and I didn't see anything about pickleball and tennis. I don't know if the administration could look at funding for those two groups. Those are well-established groups. They offer excellent services, and so could we maybe look at offering those services or funding them so they can do so? The zoning plan, we talked about that. I know we want to go further with that document. There's been some comments leading up to 2026. Are there any plans or columns to get another urban planner to move this process ahead? Is that something that's going to be in the budget? On that question, we have an amount of $300,000 to begin the different studies that have to be done so that we can facilitate the review of the plan. When I met Sébastien Doiron from Plan 360, there was a set of studies that have to be done before we can even begin the review of the plan. So we have $150,000 for a transportation study, and then another 150,000, right? Yeah, there's certain studies. We have a study for the master plan for the water system. So that has already begun. The transport master plan. The one we have is from 2014, so that has to be updated. We think we're talking about $150,000 for that study. Master plan for the storm sewer has never been done for the town, and that's something we want to see in the municipal plan. And then as to the sanitary sewers, the Sewer Commission recently did their updates. So those two main things missing, transport and water sewer. Right. Thank you for your patience. Two more items. We often say that this town is growing. I don't know. We don't have a lot of ball fields or don't have a lot of. We have 5 or 6 of them. Do we have a study of? Do we do a study of what we have, so that we can prepare for 2025? Because that type of infrastructure costs money, so we can tell our citizens that we have that we are looking at that issue. And don't know if we can find funding in 2024 to begin the process. That is on my wish list. And we also talked about the fire station. That's good news. As to go forward with the quote, do we need funding to prepare the documents for the people who will quote, who will bid? The short answer is yes, but that is not part of the operating budget, because that is a large-scale project that calls for us to go through the borrowing commission. We have to go to the loans or borrowing commission, first get approval to go ahead with the project, and then that gives us the temporary funding that we need during project development and construction. It's only at the very end that we convert that permission into a long-term loan. So this has no impact on the operating budget as of now. But with the council's permission, if the councilors agree, then the next step would be to go to the borrowing commission to get the province's approval. Who will do all this? Who will do everything well, that'll be our engineers and our architects. And do we have funding for that? As part of the temporary funding that we would get from the commission? Yes, that would be part of the loan that we would get. I see. Okay, fine. We also have received a request, and I think this is good, from an outdoor association. They've requested a field this year. I don't know if I would like if the town could look at answering their request for the purchase of the land. There's commercial, residential development, and there's green spaces. I think we're lucky to have such a nice park. So that is one of the steps that the former director worked on, and now our manager, and now the Outdoors Sports Association, very active. They want to, I don't know. I'd like to know if there's any funding for 2024, or for this wish list. That funding for land purchases comes from the reserve generally. That is, it's not a budget line, because it's not an expense. It's not a recurring expense. And you would need a resolution from the council in order to go into the reserve fund. We can't just do that. So I wanted to be documented that I have an interest in that. When that comes up, that I do want us to dip into the reserve. That would be what, on October 16th? Yes, that is coming up after the negotiations. And there is, of course, a price tag on that. So last public safety, talking about the RMP, and there's some vandalism last year. I know there's an amount that Carol gave us for refers to the emergency plan, the emergency measures plan. Again, could we have a strategy with the administration and the RCMP and funds associated with it to hire? We did this year. People to surveil at certain spots and certain times, the places, and having cameras in place. In other words, putting components in place so that we can keep our users and our facilities safe. I don't know how much money this represents, but the idea is to invest in human and security resources for our facilities. I will leave that up to the administration. If you don't think it's important, I'm not going to fight about it, but that is also on my wish list. No, these are good ideas. I mean, now, Carol did mention it, Councillor Boudreau, that there are two amounts in the budget. There's 10,000 to review the emergency plan. That's to hire someone in the summer to do that job and to look at incorporating the 4 new LSDs into our plan, because the emergency plan that we currently have only covers the town limits of the old town. And I want to look at the possibility of hiring a recruit from the college, who could work with our people on enforcing the orders. We have a second person who is working with Claude Maillet to work on questions of vandalism. Yes, that would be a part of the strategy indeed. Good. A couple of things. The renting of the town council and the second floor. That's the first time we're seeing this budget during this budget deliberation. It wasn't at all in the equation before, so we're talking about $400,000 for renovation, $100,000 for rental. Can you explain where that money comes from and what's the strategy, what's the meaning, the rationale for that? Yes, Councillor Boudreau, we would have liked to present something to you beforehand, and we didn't have enough time with all that we had to do to prepare this. So these amounts are in the budget tentatively, but the administration is running out of space. We have 2 people who can't work from the office because there's no room for them. We have 2 vacant positions. We want to hire new employees, and the 3rd floor is full. There's no more open offices. And so we are looking at the possibility of renting the 2nd floor of the building. So there is the part of that would go to rent, and then there's a part that would go to the renovation, putting in the walls and so on, internet connections, lighting and so forth. So that's where it comes from. We don't have enough space, and with the municipality, we're not slowing down. Our growth is continuing. So we won't necessarily need the whole 2nd floor right away, but we want to, as the municipality grows, we're going to be needing it. We're going to need space. And with the additional space that we have in the short term, we can look at working with different community organizations, or, for example, continue the agreement that we have with the Chamber of Commerce, just sharing its space, or
There
maybe
might
other
be
entities that
other
can
entities
share
that
some
could share
spaces
some of
with
the
us,
spaces when we don't need
since we
them
don't need everything
immediately.
at all immediately, but we will definitely
We
need
need a minimum
at
of
least
6,
6
7
or 7
offices in a fairly
office spaces in the next few years. So that leads me to my next
My
point.
last point, and after the amalgamation and the reform, we showed a chart flow. I'm not sure of blue collars. We have good people around the table. Could we have a copy of what you propose for the flow chart? I hear from an employee or another. Who is it? It's not clear. I don't need a detailed job description. For us, we look at budget. So would it be possible to know what you propose on the flow chart? It looked good with the amalgamation, and I see 5 new employees. So I'd like to know who it is and what they're going to do. Yes, we could definitely furnish you. There are 2 positions within the union. They were reclassifications, but it cost a bit more money because they were reclassified. But there are 5 new positions that we're thinking of creating, which are in the budget that Carol presented in terms of public works. The second mechanic, we only have 1 presently right now for all the equipment in the city. It's not much. So it's not much. He needs help. And it'll be another operator on the public works team. I'm told that over the last 20 years in Shediac, we've only added 1 position over 20 years. And if you look at the development that we've gone through in the last 20 years, the town of Shediac has changed quite a bit. So we would add another member on Bob's team. And when Julie with Community Life, we have 2 employees now. They're only contractors. We would like to keep them a long-term. So the second community development officer and logistics, 1 logistics working at the multifunctional center. The role is to work for all installations, not just at the center. We'd like to have somebody at the reception at the multifunctional center to make sure there's always a presence for the public and clients that go to the multifunctional center. So I'll send you my wish list by writing, and we'll be able to show you the flow chart on the Thursday night. We'll be able to show you what it looks like. So that's it for your patience around the table. Thank you. So my time already. Thank you, Carol, for your report. My question is about fire. It was cut by 800 some down to 500. The surplus of 18 grand, could it be put back into the firefighting? If you reduce the fire, they didn't need that 18,000. So we reduced there, but we've reused the money. So those monies were put to other departments. If memory serves, the council had approved the replacement of the air packs, and last year it was the last group of this year, 2023, was because it was $50-some thousand. So now they have new air packs. So this year, from what I understand from Carol, so they needed less money because they didn't need to. Air packs are not cheap, and of course this budget was reviewed with the chief, Donald, so that 55,000, the air packs is done. So the next part of the equipment they want to replace are the helmets. And even though he wanted to spread that over 4 or 5 years, but it's so much less expensive than the air packs, so we buy all of them in 2024. It's 25 grand for the helmets, and he was happy he'll be able to buy all of the helmets for all of the brigade rather than do it through 4 years. 831,000. Does that include volunteers? And yeah, it includes everything. I would like to see an increase on the pay of volunteers. There's 45 volunteers. They're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So every time they come out, they put their lives at risk. And Saturday at the open house at the fire hall, I had discussions with some of the firefighters. So they're $17 an hour when they're on call. And that's just above minimum wage. I would like to see that increase, at least equality with public works and the other workers. So inequality there. Is it too late to do that, or is this set in stone? No, these are recommendations that were made. You have the liberty of making adjustments. The only thing to say is don't forget that we can't compare the wage of a volunteer and that of a full-time employee. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. We've done increases of 3% in those budgets. If we judge not enough, you want to adjust it, we can do that. We're making recommendations. If you want to make adjustments, and if there's a consensus of the board, we can do that, of the council. That's up to you to decide. The honorariums, what is the amount? Is that in the report? Yeah, it's part of the 831,000. 125,000. It was 122. It would take it up to 125, 800. That does not include two full-time employees. Yeah, that's separate. Several of them talking at the same time. So 125 grand per year for 45 volunteers on call all the time. Cool, we could see maybe $30 an hour. Yeah, when they're, I think it would be more reasonable. I don't think it's fair. We pay minimum wage and the work they do, whether even if you're a volunteer firefighter, with all the training they do just to be a firefighter, to qualify, it's like 200 some hours before. And over the years, there's more and more training. I think they should be better paid than what we do. I think 125 grand a year for an honorarium is not much. They deserve to get more. I think we should double that. $250,000 for honorarium. The point of information, there's an amount of $33,000, which was Firemen's Association, but I understood was a top-up that the councillor had put in place in the past. I see the details, so paid both amounts together. Right now, the 125.8 is 33.7, so that one's 59 grand some. But even at that, So think about it. There are 45 volunteers. They were on call all the time, weekends, Sundays, night, evening. They have to get up and if there's an accident or whatever. So off mic. Just so we don't talk at the same time. I understand the question. So if they're paid 17 some per hour, I don't know if that's the standard. Is it more or less? Is that double? I have no reference. So that's something the administration could check on. We say we're volunteer, but when on the job, they're doing the same job as full-time firefighters. It's actually the same work, the same risk, the same work. It's tough. It's grinding work. And I don't disagree of an increase that's deserved. And I'm not sure what the standard is, but it's something the administration could look into with the chief and come back with something else. From what I understand, the chief went over this and he left the numbers as they were. Maybe didn't want to push the envelope. I don't know. But yeah, we have to encourage them because they supply essential service. They save lives. So something I've seen in media recently, talking about their municipalities, sometimes smaller, and smaller brigades are really hit because there are less and less volunteers. And it's an essential service. So we're lucky in a sense. The brigade is not lacking for volunteers, but we won't need to help them as well. So we could certainly look at what is offered in other services around us and come back Thursday with more details. Yes, thank you for doing that. So thank you. Roland Cormier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. I'll have several questions of interpretation to better understand. But before doing this, I wanted to the same discourse as Councillor O'Brien. I'm a newcomer here. A newly elected officer here. I live in Scodoc since about 60 years. Not quite, but close. I've always thought that the fire brigade were citizens and people from the area. We're happy to have, lucky to have such a high number. It's frankly volunteer work. I think that they need a more generous thank you than what we do now. As Councillor O'Brien said, last year I had nothing to say in any budget. Now that I'm at the table, I want to help them. We're lucky to have a brigade of 40-some firefighters. We could call them volunteers because we pay them with crumbs. I looked at the budget of other municipalities in the area. We're lucky to be able to have operating a professional service, adequate, competent, with more or less volunteers. Other municipalities, the big one, the Moncton, Riverview, they have full-time firefighters. A full-time is 125 to 150,000 per firefighter. We talk budget of 159. I would like to be able to find 75 grand this year, 75 next year to double that budget. We want to send them a message that we appreciate them, and we'll hope for Thursday to see what you come back with. And I would ask for the mechanism to accept a budget. Is it line by line, or we put it all together and we work once at the end? If that doesn't go, I'd have to vote against everything, or no, with questions and comments. No. What we do, we put all of this together. Administration goes to a second session. We'll come back with a revised budget, at least for the part that we completed. If we've done half, we'll review the first part again to see what adjustment from what you mentioned. As a member, Councillor says, can we do something there? I'm not, is it a new item or what the number is that can be put together? We'll have to get to a balanced budget with no choice. That's required by law. But we could say what the impacts of the changes, where we find the money. Essentially, just to clarify, I'm sure the new councillors would like to know if the administration can find, you have to get several requests, but if they don't come back with no request, can a member of the council say, I'd like to move that we had this or that to the budget? Members would vote for or against, or is that how it works? Or say one vote to accept the budget, to refuse overall at the end. But when we will have reviewed everything, we'll have made adjustments. Administration will, if there was one adjustment on one item, there will probably be a few, 10 or 20. So they move that particular change. We'll see if that satisfies people, okay, and check mark on that one. And maybe there's a consensus or around something. We can vote all of it together. So it's not item by item. Otherwise, it would be too long. But it's important. So we'll propose, vote, and second. That's how the municipal law works. I have a few questions. The first page, I know we had an increase of 20%. My question is, there was construction within there. There was an assessment that was done, and they gave us a number. For example, Shediac last year was 990 million. This year is 1.16 billion. But there was construction in Shediac. What is, I know the difference, what is the construction of the town and LSD's 20% is not assessment of 20% more. The 20% is part of the assessment. But new construction, same time, is it 10-10 or new properties? All that we receive from the province, and Carol is looking, she may have more details. Right now, from this year, the assessment is given based on the limits of the new town. So we don't have the distinction of, and all we have, what we got for the province is our assessment, property assessment goes from 1,424,000,000, 1,077,000,000. It's an increase of 20%. And that doesn't tell us what the percentage of that is, increases in new construction. I understand your question. It's one table we get from the province. So, no, thank you for that answer. New construction was unused land before, so we started with nothing before. You have more details, Carol? We have so assessments from the province, residential, non-residential, heavy industry.
Par les différents sous-unités de la ville de Shediac.
The different subunits of the town of Shediac, but that doesn't
No.
divide between what's a reassessment and what's a new construction. I don't recall having seen that figure at this time last year, so it's just of interest to me. I take it that the municipal council with the businesses had a taxation flexibility. That is this year. So 1.4 to 1.7, right? What's the calculation that you used? We used the same rate of 1.5 from last year. Could we see what 1.7 would represent? Sure, we could do that. I'd like to know how much more that represents. Has a big impact in a municipality that has a lot of commercial activity, maybe a lower one here. Also on the question of 1.5, it's also the Shediac Industrial Park, right? Is that included under 1.5? Everything that's non-residential. That is correct. That means that last year the industrial park was at 1.5 and remains at 1.5 this year. That is correct? Yes. Page 3. You mentioned local revenues of the LSDs. We didn't have it, but get it, but that's $77,000. What is that? At the end of the fiscal year, if you wind up with a surplus, let's say $500,000, it has to be recognized in our 2 years later fiscal year, that surplus. I put that for the LSDs, and that's the province which gave us that money, because I didn't have the LSD surpluses. I had the surpluses for here, but not for the LSDs. I see. And what she has just said is correct, but I just want to specify also that the rate that the town receives from the LSDs, well, these are basic services which are included in the budget, such as trash pickup, solid waste management, street lights, animal control, and so forth, emergency measures. That's the surplus that Carol refers to, and that's the one that has been being carried forward from 2 years before. Yes. There were others. Page 5, right? Page 5, yes. I'll have a lot less questions next year, but you should trust me. I will. Now the 1.4 for local costs. I imagine that's for the town of Shediac, right? So that's finance shared costs, $20,300. What is that? $20,300. What is it? I can answer to that if you want to. On that page 5. I had the page open in front of me. That's bank fees, bank charges for all of our different accounts. Thank you. Page 6. $42,000 for revenue, finance revenues. What's that? 42,274. What's that shared revenues?
On avait le surplus des DSL que vous avez mentionné.
That's the surplus from the LSGs. That's the one from the city. I mentioned the surplus from the LSGs. This is the surplus from the city, the town, that is. TP revenue, that's what's that now? That's part of the salaries that are paid out of the water fund. So it depends what I put in the water fund for salaries, for public works. So that then leads to a revenue for the general fund. That is that to say that the water fund is has to pay for its own employees. Can I ask a question about the water fund as well? Hang on, let's put that off. That's another kettle of fish. Okay. Now let's go to page 8, if we could, please. $212,000 for Rotary Park. There's an increase of $112,000. What's that? 200. Sorry, the increase is $112,000. Total is $212,000.
OK. L'augmentation de $112,000 est expliquée par $20,000
is explained by $20,000 to replace the masts, the poles that we have there. For the poles, 20,000 for them. One of them broke, but we're replacing them all.
C'est ça, je pourquoi qu'on voudrait les remplacer. Encore là, c'est une recommandation.
This is a recommendation to replace them all. Our flags were stolen this summer. And the reason why they were stolen is because we're still in the old system where you can where you have to race them with a cord with a rope, and it's easy to cut the rope. So the idea would be to have the rope inside of the pole so that people cannot, and also they're moving a lot when moving around. So 3 of them, one of them is broken, but the other 3 you're saying, are in good shape. They just aren't, you're saying, well, yeah, they're still standing, but they don't serve our purposes, is the idea. That's right. They're getting a bit old, 20 years old. And they simply don't enable us to do that, to preserve the flags. So that is a question of security and also about the way they blow around in the wind. So that is a big amount of money, and Carol explained it, but it is a bit complex. Is that the Centre Marus has a lease that hasn't expired yet, and so the bill for tax bill hasn't been transferred to the Metro Marus yet, so the city will be receiving that. 85,000 of that difference comes from their tax bill, but of course that will be billed to them, and they will have to pay. But it's there because it's still under our name. But eventually that bill will go directly to them, to Marus. Thank you. $255,000 for local costs when it comes to solid waste. And then there's shared costs for the landfill site. That's right. That's ECO 360, and it's basically bringing the solid waste there. And local is for what? Is picking up the garbage within the old town limits. That is correct. Yes, that is correct. I imagine that the old town pays to be able to use, pays the tipping fees.
Ça, c'est les tipping fees de-
That's the tipping fees, right?
pour tout le monde.
For everybody. Yes, for everybody. Correct?
OK.
Correct.
Mais où est-ce qu'il est coût pour les districts services locaux? Pour
What about
Collect.
les collectes?
what about the other local services? That's in collect pickup?
Ouais, parce que nous autres,
Parce que c'est dans- Ça, c'est dans le budget de DSL.
Je pense que c'est dans les dépenses de DSL.
That's in the LSD expenses.
La prochaine
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's on the next page. Okay, thank you.
Le centre-ville downtown, on parle de
Downtown. $127,000. What's the 127,000?
C'était le budget qu'on a approuvé 3 semaines passées.
Is that the budget we adopted 2-3 weeks ago?
Centre-ville d'enfants.
Plus qu'on le retrouve, là, pour pouvoir. Ça page 8.
We're still on page 8 here.
Avec, ouais.
Right.
C'est ça, j'essaie de trouver.
On a un écart budgétaire de 29 000.
Oui.
That's a difference of 29,000
Dû à un 30 000 qu'on a mis pour la remise en place.
due to the $30,000 that we invested.
Mais, OK.
Julie?
Je vais expliquer, ouais. Vous
Uh,
vous souvenez de la fontaine avec les marsouins?
You remember the fountains with the porpoises? We still have the porpoises, and so the goal would be to bring them to Rotary Park. This is the Rotarians who had invested in this, and this would be, and the plan could be presented. We have a plan from the designer, and the idea would be to put the porpoises there, but that would have to all be brought together. So it's.
Je crois que le conseil Cormier voulait aussi savoir qu'est-ce qui
I think Councillor Cormier also wanted to know what was the rest of it also. The not just the 29,000, but everything else that makes up the 127,000.
Ah, OK.
What do you mean?
Le 98 de l'année de.
So in other words, the 98,000 for this year, that is maintenance, repair, 50,000, electricity, 8,000. Ah, okay, fine, I get it. Beautification, so on, so on.
Je vais commenter sur les marsouins, t'as dit?
Marsouin.
You're saying the porpoises.
Monsieur le maire, je veux juste aviser que la dernière fois que
Sure.
le conseil municipal
The last time that the municipal council decided to install
ces choses-là,
those things,
le maire s'est fait battre aux dernières élections sur,
the mayor went down to defeat.
vous voulez,
So watch out. You may not be happy with when your dreams wishes come true.
c'est sûr que c'est une bonne idée.
I'm not sure if it's such a great idea,
Moi, personnellement, je pense,
personally.
moi, je pense pas que c'est une bonne idée de
I don't think it's such a great idea to reinstall those.
de les looter.
Eventually, the municipal council decided to remove them, and the municipal council decided at that time to remove them because the 3 years fountain had not been working for 3 years, and they redid it, and at least the administration will make a proposal, and the funds are available there. But that's Public Works, but I do appreciate your comment. Thank you for looking out for my political future.
Juste un petit point d'information.
Le design, a little point of information, the conceptual design to reinstall them was there before we came in. So at some point, maybe the administration received a mandate to come back with a plan. I imagine that was discussed earlier because it was there in the past. And so we're simply just following up on this, right? That's right. Yeah, we want to inform you about everything that's going on. Come back to us and then inform us about everything. Yes, it's been a while. Page 9.
Local service expense. On parle de coûts locaux. Si je comprends bien, il y a 184
local costs. So $184,000 for local expense Pointe du Chêne.
C'est là qu'on va chercher la facture de 184. Je suis correct en disant ça?
Is that where we get the bill from for 184,000?
Oui, oui.
That's where the expense comes from?
Ah,
What do you mean? What exactly did you want to know there?
ouais, mais En faisant le
On va
budget,
récupérer des dépenses à Pointe-du-Chêne.
en faisant le budget, c'est les citoyens de Pointe-du-Chêne.
So
qui
this
vont-
is the citizens, the residents of Pointe du Chêne who are paying the 184,000. Is that
Ouais, le
my
184
understanding?
est représenté par le
184,000
directement à Pointe-du-Chêne.
is
$1 qui est là.
for the 6,000 for control, also 44,600 for lighting, solid waste management. We have $3,700 and only 129,000. So that's basically, yeah, it's all being spent there.
Je sais que
Right.
70 000, c'est pour le centre communautaire. Puis je
I know that the 70,000 is for the community center and local expenses LSD is the rest. Maybe for the people who don't realize it, the reason why these the three others are combined and Pointe du Chêne is broken out is because several years ago, Pointe du Chêne voted for an increase to give them their budget for the community center. That is why Pointe du Chêne is broken out from the three others, because they don't have the same taxation rate as the other LSTs. It's higher
D'à peu près 1 cent.
by about 1 cent.
C'est tout, Monsieur le maire. Merci.
That is all, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Murray Lloyd,
Mary Lloyd.
you're on deck.
On your efforts here. It was a short period of time. Well done. PG 2680.
Greenfield.
Did the grass grow?
I would hope so.
491. 491.
About 52,000 and a little bit
Against 8.
against 8,000, went up by 491%.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're gonna find it. Just it's there obviously there's things that explain that. Essentially that's where Carol had mentioned earlier. There are plans to buy. It's when they say Taravat, it's more like parks and trails, if
Green
you will.
space, yeah.
So it's to buy an additional trailer for the crews that do the lawn mowing in the summer. And it's also to purchase a piece of equipment that's worth $32,000 to spread salt and sand on our trails in the
Thank you.
winter.
That's fine. That's perfect. The under general funds, the multi-surface 400,000. Are you satisfied with that figure?
Well, are we?
If you want to invest more, it's just,
It's not that.
yeah.
I looked at your presentation and it's excellent, but I'm wondering if 400,000 is going to cover that.
For phase one,
Oh,
I'll let you explain.
Okay. We had to
Say, over to you, Bob.
Yes, thank you. So we've had to estimate an amount, like we haven't not even had the chance to go and have any design work done on the additional, on the parking lot work. There's the idea to add a washroom to the locker room building. At the moment, we are thinking this is looking appropriate to get that work done, but it has to be looked at for sure.
okay, that's fine. You answered my question.
And if there ever was a cost overrun, it was huge, or significant enough that you don't have some spare change somewhere in another line item. Well, staff would come back and ask, can we go into the reserve and grab another 35,000, or something like that.
One last question and a point. Translation fees. Where do you have that? I can't find it.
Be an administration of some sort.
Zero deux?
Département 2103. Dans autres services administration.
Department 2102.
La ligne, nous avons
That's
la
where we have
qui est là, puis
translation.
un budget de 25 000 le même que
We have a $25,000 budget, same as last year.
Your translation last year and this year are the same?
Yes,
Is that what you just
the
said?
budget, yeah.
Alors,
Okay, that's-
vous dites que la traduction est pareille comme l'an passé.
Are we sure?
It doesn't make sense.
If I can add.
Est-
Mr. CAO?
No, well, the reason we did go over this year because there was a period of time where we had to outsource our translation services. We're talking translating of documents and those types of things, right? Not the simultaneous translation, but more the.
But
the
isn't that all inclusive?
It's the budget covers both, yes, but the simultaneous translation hasn't changed. We have that at our meetings like we had before. The translation of documents has been an added cost, but we used to have to go external for that. But since the arrival of our new clerk and director of communications, who's quite able in that department, he's been doing a lot of it internally. So we're not having to outsource it anymore.
Thank you.
Good.
Just one little point. It's extremely difficult through the translation to pick this up because they don't have the paperwork. Can the presentation be done bilingually, please, on take the installation and recreation, you go through all of that. I find it very difficult because I don't know what it is.
Okay.
And what in the translation, when you're listening to him, you should hear this. This is a joke, and it's not his fault. Okay, it's not his fault because he doesn't have the rest, so he's trying to catch up. So it would help if it was presented in both languages. Please.
Make it easier to follow.
It would make it much easier.
Yeah.
But I congratulate you on your efforts. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Councillor, part of the challenge that we've had is the software that we use for our accounting
Yes.
is in French, right? So to go in and to translate it all would be a significant amount of work, which we haven't had a chance to do. Not to say we won't do it, but it's just we're trying to work with the software that we have currently, but we realize it's something that needs to be addressed in the future.
I thank you
Yeah.
for the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. Prochain, conseiller principal Chevalier.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
So,
Les sujets ont été touchés que j'avais pris en
I think all of the notes have been taken. The feasibility study for Pascal Poirier and of his building, what can we, I know we've done a study already to what it would cost to repair it. So I'm not sure what date the study was done. I'm not aware. Perhaps we could add, and maybe Dennis, but essentially we had a study done. We were told that it cost about $500,000 to put it back in an acceptable position. We somewhat hesitant to ask you to do this before we know what we do with the building once it's renovated. So in the question, to invest a bit of time and money to give it a vocation, a reason for being, and then it would make sense to proceed. I know we want to conserve it. We've done some temporary work over it over the summer to prevent water running off from the roof and so on. But recommending to put 500 grand in the building without knowing what we'll use it for after, we want to find it raison d'être, a mission, a vocation. And then if that makes sense, then we would look to make the necessary renovations. We had discussed 3-4 years ago. That's what I was wondering, what we would do with it. On the side, with the revenue of the price bar, it's not expensive. I went to my son's wedding. It didn't seem. So you want to charge more or just in passing? Okay, there's two or three at the same time. I think it included the rental as well. We'll evaluate this. I think it's good to offer that service at an affordable cost to people getting married because it's expensive. So we'll assist it. Yeah, I thought it wasn't very expensive, but it's okay. Maybe an adjustment in 2025. A discretionary fund, one from 500 to 400. Is that we did nothing with the 500 grand this year? And or are there some amounts that we want to get out of that 400 grand? Presently, there was 500 grand put in 2023. I think we're at 380 at this time, Carol. Maybe 370 used up. So we've rounded it to 400 for next year. If the budget is adopted as presented, there will be a lot of investment done already. So the fund would be there for emergencies, unforeseen expenses. So we thought we could reduce it somewhat. As I said, for this year, I think we're at, in terms of promises, all the expenses have gone through yet, but for resolutions, I think we're about 380,000 level. I had asked the same question about the 500 grand amount in 2023. It's the highest amount that we've ever had. It's more than double than what we have normally, which is around 200. So the former director of finance, Lynn, even though it's money, well, there's no planned expenses, but she said, I think there's so many unforeseen, there'll be more expenses that we can't see right away. So because of the reform. So she said, I think I'm comfortable with leaving it there, but she thought the number was a bit too big for her. She said, but we should adjust it, lower it next time. So Lynn's not here anymore. So there's essentially open. It's like a cushion. I don't know if you have the second request from the festival or how that's coming. That would be an example of something that would require more money. This year we put preliminary plans for the firefighters building. There was something for a plow. I think it was taking a year to come. I hope it's here for winter. So those were unforeseen items that we've added over the year. This downtown budget, is that the amount they requested, or when they made their presentation, there was always 12,000 we gave them for storage of Christmas decoration, but it cost 15,000 in reality. So there's a couple of amounts in the next in the special project. She would come with an extra project where there is waste baskets and so on. So we got that request yesterday or today, so we haven't had a chance to incorporate it yet, these numbers, but we had estimated at 25 or 28 grand. The other amounts is storage. The 13 is storing decor, but she included it in the request we got. We'll come back with a recommendation on this and make an adjustment. We should be able to do this by Thursday. I think we just got it yesterday or today.
Donc, le 12 000, il n'est pas dans les budgets.
Oui, le 12 000 est dans les
So the 12 grand, yes, it is in the budget.
3 000 de plus de ce 28-là.
It'd be 3,000 more in that 28,
Ça serait-
if I understand correctly.
Oui, aussi.
Dans le 28 000, c'est ça, il y a un 3 000.
Yes, in that 28, there's a 3 to put the 12 to 15
Non, un projet spécial.
and special project.
Va-tu couvrir son projet?
So will the 28 cover the special project?
On vient juste de le recevoir.
We think so. We just got it, but I'm fairly sure yes.
On vous
If we
l'expliquera jeudi.
need to make adjustments, we'll explain on Thursday.
Puis merci, Carole, pour les budgets.
Thank you, Carol, for the budget.
C'est bien, c'est bon. Conseil Paul, je vais te revenir de nouveau, mais parce que
So Councillor Paul will come back. Some have not spoken yet, and I said that Roland, you had your button.
Merci, M. Maire.
Jean-Claude, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Quelque chose que j'aurais pu faire. Moi, c'est d'accord avec conseiller O'Brien.
I agree with Councillor Ryan and Cormier about the firefighters. I think it's important.
Est-ce qu'on regarde
I'm also looking at,
troisième à plein temps?
should we look at a third full-time firefighter? If one is on vacation, the other is sick, I think the two
Peut-être pas assez avec
may not be enough with the growing population. You know, we
24, 25,
maybe 2024, 2025.
avec la population et
I think with the population we have
sont bons et tout.
and their finances being good,
Troisième
I think a third full-time firefighter might not be a bad idea.
décidé, là, tu sais, je-
Not up to me to decide, I'm just bringing it up.
À l'Arena,
Also, the arena,
va
the canteen,
fonctionner cette année.
will it be working, functioning this year?
Oui, on a un contrat de.
Yes, we have a
avec,
contract
le Dexili pour ça.
OK, merci.
with Dixley for that. Yes, thank you.
En termes de ça, c'est juste un commentaire, une suggestion.
There was a committee comment suggestion that could be a discussion between the administration and the chief firefighter. If the chief does not ask for a third one, that maybe, does that indicate he doesn't need one? Or I'll defer my judgment to his capacity, you know, and I'm not an expert in fire prevention. I know you were one, so I rely more on you on that. So maybe they could talk about it. Maybe that would be planned before the increase. Have they thought about this so far?
Non, ton pédrin n'est pas élevé. Parce que écris ton commentaire.
You can write your comment.
Comme dit, j'ai conseil Paul et conseil Roland qui ont posé des boutons de nouveau. Je vais
So they've pushed their button again. So I'll ask those who haven't spoken yet.
Merci, Monsieur Maire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll continue in the same line with the firefighters. It's more pleasant than my first and second experience. It's really well done, the budget. For firefighters, I'm somewhat worried. I agree with what's been said in terms of wages. I'm worried that the chief is not come forth with those things. Perhaps we need a discussion with the chief and ask for a wish list. I don't know if he doesn't want to come forth with it or with that forth, but it would be more easy to support when it comes from the chief and ask what he asks. I'm somewhat concerned that he doesn't come forth with this. However, the chief, he's the boss. They need a discussion needs to be had on a wish list. The only thing I would add, and I agree, Chief and I are in good relationship. We went through the budget together. From my knowledge, he was happy with that. Don't forget, there's two other big projects on the capital projects. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to ask too much here, because there are two other big projects. but I don't want to put the words in his mouth. Two big requests are coming for the capital, increasing the barracks and the truck. There's two or three speaking at the same time. Yes, I'll definitely have a discussion with him. So he should prepare his wish list. That would be good. I'm sure the whole council would like to see what the long-term plans are for firefighting services. We're planning construction that adds a building and equipment that will help for sure. What will it be in 20 years from now, 50 years from now? We should start to plan for all of this, at least in a preliminary level. Where to plan it, to develop it. Secondly, you talked about the software. Mr. Boudreau, do we have in our plan, in our budgets, tools that the administration needs with the new council? Have we included that in budgets, adding the tools that you need to manage the town now that we are more bilingual and so on? We have the budget for IT items. Last year, this year, there was a special amount added that had been added for the server project. We were changing servers. We were doing something with the server. I'm not techno on this. It was a big project with the server. That was bigger than normal. That's why it was added in 2023. The only thing we've added, which is also important, is updating our website. It's really it really needs a complete revamp. We've estimated this at 100 grand. It's a big project. So we propose it in the budget. There's still a budget for IT equipment for the everyday working for employees in the council. Also, we're considering to have an employee hired by the town for translation and simultaneous translation. Is that a possibility, something we looked at? No, it's not something that we've looked at. I know for simultaneous or for text. Those are two different domains. Certainly two different skill sets, if I can express it that way. Simultaneous is an art, and I'm not sure that we would necessarily have enough for a full-time person to do this simultaneous. For document translation, as I mentioned, the registrar is fairly good. We have communications officers that's vacant that we're waiting to fill, which will probably be able to help the registrar with this. We don't think there's a need for that. Could we offer courses or sessions for the people to do the translation? So we listen, the terminology is not there. We always assume the same. Is there something that we give them, supply them to become more easier to adjust with the lingo? They're contractors. We pay them by contract. We could have a discussion with them if we've maybe they don't have the documents that they should have had at their hand. We can certainly check with them. They're contractors and so on. Yeah. And that's just in terms of discussion with other municipalities. In Campbellton, they use a translator, and he lives in Fredericton, but they don't have the virtual like we do. The person travels from Fredericton to Campbellton for one evening and comes back home and has to stay overnight and so on. So they don't have the technology in their meeting room. Last year, we'd done some money with a program. In 2022, there was something I inherited when I was new, executive director, community director, financial director by interim, and so on. And they wanted me to renew a contract. They had no idea what it represented. So we did not renew the contract with that particular organization. But that's something that we need to review in the future. But we had too much on our plate at that time. And they were persistent that we renewed the contract with them. We never used their services.
Le départ de personnel.
Okay, merci.
C'est ça, ouais. Pas du bon timing.
Mainly because the staff, the departure of the staff, not the good timing. Something about the administration for our emergency plan. I don't know if you know the 211 program, which is a free program. We might be able to use that for our emergency plan. That's all. Thank you.
Conseiller Peter Rowe.
Peter Rowe. I'd like to discuss a rather important subject, something that's going to come up in the municipal plan. We're spending a lot of money on facilities for our youth, and that is necessary. Talking about $400,000 for the multi-sport facility, bike paths. When I look at the sidewalks, 150,000 for new sidewalks. That depends on the vision that we will adopt for the future. I would like to see in the municipal plan that all the streets built in the future have to have sidewalks, and all new streets that we repair get sidewalks added to them. And if we're not prepared to make that commitment, then we have to increase the amount to 350,000. It's going to be huge. We have a lot of people who would use the sidewalks to walk. We already have a lot, and there's a lot of places where there's no sidewalk. When new streets are built without sidewalks, I just find that crazy for the future of for the vision that we have for our future municipality. I would like to see that in the municipal plan. That I would like to see an order saying that there's no further streets built without sidewalks.
Le plan municipal est en marche. Moi, je pense qu'on devrait augmenter le niveau des nouveaux trottoirs de pas mal plus que 300.
And I think we should, if we want to get this done before the municipal plan is in place, we have to increase this by quite a bit more than 350,000. 150,000 will never get us to where we need to be. The city should adopt a vision. I know it will never happen, but the vision should be over the long term that we should have sidewalks on every street. And if that's our vision, well, then we should put pressure on our developers to say, sorry, we don't accept developments without them. And if we're repairing our streets, then we have to make them, the contractors, bid on that. They have to bid on sidewalks. And if we're not ready to do that, then I suggest that we increase the amount for new sidewalks far above 350,000. I'm not sure where you want to go with that, but I think that I would like the council to support me on that, because in the long term, our population will be aging and we are going to be needing these, and it would be a good vision to put into our municipal plan.
Merci, Conseiller Rowe.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe.
Je veux juste souligner puis je veux dire, je suis pas l'expert là, mais
I'm not the expert.
Je crois que c'est vraiment
on the municipal plan, but I think this is what we call the design spec, subdivision spec. Not sure of the exact term, but depending on the type of street, if it is a collector street or a semi-collector street, I don't know all the proper terminology, local street. When a developer builds, then if it's that type of street, you have to put in one sidewalk. Another type of street, it's two. Another type, there are none. That's the kind of document that we want. Where does that come from? That is the plan of the town of Shediac. I can add some information about that. The documents, such as the subdivision guideline and the municipal spec, were updated recently. Marc Cormier. Subdivisions that are being completed after years of work are still on the original subdivision plan. They're not, and those are on the last legs, but last stages but the new ones that come along down the pipe, those ones will be subject to the new standards in terms of the street classification, and I have checked that. Those are all clarified in there. So I have to familiarize myself with the new document because we haven't yet had to do that. But when the time comes, I will make sure that they will have to meet at least the municipal specs as at a minimum. But who produced the municipal specs? The municipality? Based on what? I don't know. It was created in January of 2022. This one was. I think it was influenced by similar specs from other municipalities. It was originally developed 2 engineers ago, I think, Margot, that's when it was designed. At least if the memory serves. In the comments, introductory comments to the document, there's a collaboration of the town of Moncton, the city of Moncton. So I guess Moncton had an influence over it. For a development, 8 phases, or they're in the 8th phase, and it started 10 years ago. So they started with those standards. So that's what they're doing, right? So these things, they take a while to come through the pipeline. Yes, Mr. Town Manager. Clarification here. Budget has 350,000 for new sidewalks, but there's also 300,000 for repair of existing sidewalks. So that also has been increased by $100,000 from this year. So that gives us more to work with. But the point you're making is not a bad one. And obviously, the municipality is entitled to add sidewalks to future specs, but don't forget that also will increase the cost of those developments. So the developers, if they want to build subdivisions here, that will increase the cost per house. It's doable per dwelling. I get that, but we have said that we have been at the mercy of developers, and they were for many years, and they were the ones who basically told us what to do. And it's time for us to put on the gloves and say, and look, sorry, but you got to do what you got to do. And if you're not willing to do it, then I don't think we can be at their mercy. I don't think we can. I'm not against development. I want development, but I think the development, the way it's been done in the past, is not acceptable. Your street doesn't have, and it's a huge, great wide street, and it doesn't have a sidewalk. How can that be? Your very own street.
C'est très dangereux pour les enfants.
very dangerous for children to play in that street, and older people as well. And if you want people to be active, you got to give them a place where they can walk.
Faut pas se laisser influencer
We
par
can't let ourselves be pushed around by developers who say,
Ils veulent le faire au-
you know, I don't want to do it. Of course, they always want to keep their costs to the very lowest
en charge de notre ville, puis,
amount, but
notre ville soit faite.
we have to tell them what to do and how they're going to do it.
Écoute,
And if they're not interested, then we're going to find other developers. However, to follow up on the 350,000 for new sidewalks, we're going to do one section at a time, but has that amount been increased because of the fact that we weren't able to do any new sidewalks in 2023? Yes, there was a portion. You can see Webster, we're still working on the land transfer process, and we discovered that there's a water line right under the sidewalk, so that increased the costs to some extent. I can't present it all to you this evening, but yes, the budget for new sidewalks next year also has to cover that. Right. I would like to see those amounts. All right, we can take note of that and present them. Thank you. Next point.
Madame la maire suppléante.
Merci. Je regarde
Yes,
le bouton.
go ahead.
Je répéterai pas tout ce que les autres ont dit.
I won't repeat what everyone else has said, but I agree. Thank you, Carol.
Puis l'équipe qui a travaillé à ça. Je suis beaucoup d'accord avec ce que Paul a dit là-bas du début avec les
I wanted
aussi.
to talk about what Paul said. A couple of questions that I have. Not sure if this was a. What about the libraries? What's our expense? This is on page 9. 2780. I'm not sure exactly what their ask is or what their need is, but this budget was worked out with them. Let me see here. It's not a big amount. $34,000. Just out of curiosity.
Ça, ce montant-là, ça inclut pas le loyer, là.
That doesn't include rent.
Ça, c'est juste pour un budget pour leurs opérations, là.
It's just an operating budget. Right. 34,050 versus 32,855 last year. Or that is this year. That is for their activities. The way all public libraries work is that the province pays salaries. The municipality is responsible for the office and operating expenses. So that is it. Okay, I understand. I couldn't imagine the salaries would be in there. 34,000 is not much money. No, the salaries are paid by. I'm not a newbie to this stuff either, by the way. So yeah, I did know that. I had heard also. Another counselor mentioned this, but I'm going to take the credit for mentioning it now. In the Pascal Poirier Park, there's the idea of building something on the gates so that people don't loiter around the stage, the bleachers. I don't know. I don't know if it's something that is doable or can be done. This would. I'm just putting it out there. You know, if you look at we have a plan for Pascal Poirier. That plan is coming down the pipe. And so there might be structures you're saying there that could enable us to avoid loitering in that part. And the other on the stage there, and the other thing.
On a enlevé toute l'histoire de l'ombre, parasol, la toile.
La toile était
the shade.
les espaces où ce que les poteaux étaient. Donc,
the fabric was is going to be put, new fabric is going to be put in. It wasn't done in time for the end of the season. The supplier was not available, but yeah, but that didn't cover the area between the four poles. And then the other thing, and also in the park, there's Paul mentioned that there might be bathrooms there, washrooms around the tennis courts, and this is something that's been going on for a long time. Washrooms, I don't know if there's showers, people who need them, the porta potties, and also I noticed that there was a porta potty these years in Pascal Poirier. We might have forgotten why. It's not necessarily it's so nice. The washrooms for people who have reduced mobility was broken during the summer, so we put in a porta potty for them temporarily for that. Okay, I understand. And that's been gone. That was completely dismantled, right? I heard that there was demolition being done, but I wasn't really sure what was the status of that. Thank you. Skate park. Budget, special events, activities, talking about all sorts of things here. Green spaces, parks. We had some money for the skate park. Sometimes some people mention this to us. Then there is also a question of vandalism there. We have some funding, I think, that need to be funding in the expense budget. Some black paint, this is white. We use black for that because it's harder to deface. Thank you. I agree with Paul for the whole question of the game parks. I heard that we've bought garbage cans to replace the blue bins on the main streets. That is good. I'm pretty excited about that because the blue bins, oof, not too pretty. And then we have enough bike racks. It's in the budget for the trails. It'd be good to have them where there's a bench. Yes, that's part of our plans. Any incentives for businesses to put in bike racks? For example, Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever clinic, there's no place you can't go there on bike because there's no place to park your bike. That's something that some people have mentioned to me. I think the Downtown Corporation had worked with some businesses to install them, and some did buy them last year. It's something that we need to review. But we have had requests. And we can look at that with the Chamber of Commerce, and we can look at development, that in context of economic development. I think this would be great. It'd be nice if they were all sort of color coordinated a bit to, they were so make it prettier. They should do some branding, their bike branding. Town is growing. The grass gets growing faster in summers, and this is some places where the grass is too long, it's very tall, and tall grass. Not so pretty. It turned into, all of a sudden we're standing in a hayfield, right? Yeah. Last evening, we're talking about the 100th anniversary. We're talking about the speed on the trails. And I've been on other trails, and people are able to share them. If you're polite, then you're polite. And if you're not, you're not. You can't make somebody polite who doesn't want to be. But we could have some bells that we could offer to people, so that when you are riding along the trail and you're riding past somebody, you ring your bell, and that would be encouraging. Then we could also have an ad campaign. Wouldn't very cost very much money, but people would understand that that's what you should do. It's a matter of courtesy, and the money could be invested that way for
it's well
for
invested
trails.
money. The path belongs to the province. I think we have all the same challenges, but we have to surmount those challenges. You know, to put speed signs. Who's going to police that? We don't have somebody to management. You know, speed panels would be a way to educate people. Like in a swimming corridor, we want to share when we're too many of them. Same thing on the trails. So educate in a positive manner so that people feel at ease to use it and share it. Absolutely. Okay. So at some point, with the new internet site, when we're properly staffed on social media or on any topics, whether is the garbage bag for dogs left all over the place, or all those things, property for the municipality is dear to me. Even if it's, we have to have the means to get the message out. So it's a question of education, and the young people will convince their parents, perhaps. So those were my 2 cents. Thank you. So maybe a toll booth on the Pointe du Gêne. You only go by if you have a if you have a bell. If not, we give you one.
J'ai pas fini. Ton bidon? Oui, je pensais que j'avais perdu mon accès. Le Janice m'avait demandé quelque chose.
I was reminded, what could we do to remove the telephone booth in Roxy? And we've been 12 years, I think, can be Alliant, or when nobody is taking ownership of it. Unless we do graffiti, is there still a phone in it? No, but the phone box is still there, but there's no phone in the booth. It could be a work of art. You know, maybe a bike work of art. You know, you come around the round point where we often put posters. It's a lobster festival or whatever. There's electrical box there. It would be nice if it was something else. It could be painted. So thank you for that. So people had asked for a second round, but it's a shorter one, second round. So Boudreau, one thing I wanted to mention before, last year we talked about the firefighting barrack and for submission for closing doors. Okay. The intergenerational center. I don't know if it's the budget here or 2024. I would think that's the year that we should act to be proactive on the big project we're talking about. Do we plan for funds to add consultants, architects? I don't want to miss the boat in 2024. The next wave of people coming from Ottawa if we don't have the resources. You have a comment on that, Victor? Definitely, there's money in the budget for that. We've planned some money. What was lacking last time, the project was set up quickly. The government wanted a work plan, an assessment of the needs. They wanted more regional collaboration. So we do have funds to get the consultants to rebuild the file for the next time where there's infrastructure program. Right now, there's no program, but we're confident there will be, or some will be renewed. We hear this fall. We want to be ready for that. So thank you. Also, maybe I see that Shediac was taken off for the Chamber of Commerce met earlier this week. Danny could talk about it. They wanted to see the funding in 2023 to elaborate a plan to recruit. They do excellent work. I'll put it on my wish list. I will send you something not clear in his sentence. Could you, will send a letter. Have you seen this, Sylvain? Yes, we got a request from Chamber of Commerce. The reason there's no fund, it's because of the pandemic. It was a promotion campaign to try to encourage people to buy local during the pandemic. Some businesses were really struggling. This campaign, there was a start and an end. Now that it's over, the Chamber of Commerce wants to look at a new promotion. So for that reason, we couldn't put funding on that item. But there is a request to do a new promotion. I think they want to start in February and March 2024 for a promotion. They're ready to put funds in there too. So 30,000. Thank you. So a couple of items to question department heads. For sewage, no urban planning, an increase of 60,000. When we changed for the graph that we would be saving money, but now it's an increase of 9%. Other services were added to the commission, but the director had said that we would be saving money. The 360 plan is one service among 7 that they offer. Eco 360, the landfill site, there's economic development, tourism, recreational, social development, community development. Okay. It's the other items that are new. They took some expansion funding of those new mandates given by the province. You must do this. It's not a question that you can't do it, but the region can decide what it wants to do and how much it wants to spend, like we're doing this evening. I'm the president of the Regional Service Commission, I can tell you that. So could we have a list of the services that we use if there's doubling? Maybe they should come and explain themselves. They would be happy to do that. They've done it with others. We have a lot of services. It's another level of government. It's a place where to get services. Is this doubling the services that we could offer, or no? The invoices, the plan for 360, their invoice based on your fiscal, some other pay less than Shediac, they have less money. But the new mandate, in addition to tax the other member municipalities, with the equality payments that the province has for quite a while, Well, the two parts of that parity is amount per capita per person. The more people you have, the more money you have. And the other is a real parity system to fill in the financial need when you're not close to what you need. They make up the difference. In St. John, New Brunswick gets over $12 million in parity equipment, and because they can't fulfill their needs. But for us, our core funding goes down 20% per year for 5 years, and this is the 4th year. So in 4 years, we won't get any parity payment as well. The same thing for Moncton. So we need to talk to the MLA. So there's 2 or 3 at the same time. No relationship to the budget.
On vous a partagé, puis il y en a peut-être de vous autres qui ont déjà répliqué, là, mais justement, la Commission des services régionaux a lancé une invitation pour une réunion le 28 octobre où il invite tous les membres du conseil des 13 municipalités, puis c'est justement pour parler des nouveaux services, des nouveaux mandats, puis tout ça.
Their translator hasn't come in yet. So you have all this in your inbox. Maybe you have not all replied if you'll take part or not. I would encourage you to do that. It's on a Saturday. Broadley Farms member
Merci, Victor.
of the council.
Pour les murs du centre mobile au centre multifonctionnel, les murs là sont seulement 10, 12 ans vieux. Ils sont maganés de même pour qu'est-ce que le problème avec?
Donc, quand on a bâti l'édifice, avec le temps, les murs ont shifté, puis le toit, puis le plancher.
When we built the building over time, we can see the building being shifted, the access to attach it have not aligned. It broke the wall. So we have one wall we need to replace and replace the others as well. For the the fountain, I'm not afraid for that fountain that was built in 03 for the centenary, the centennial of the city. Over the last year, it cost a lot of money for wiring. People have always liked what was like. I'm happy that we'll put it in a place it deserves to commemorate the centennial. So, truck. It's the only mistake. What's the amount for the hockey in LGR? I know on 20 million budget, you'd want to nitpick. So to have the logo.
Le programme qu'ils font à chaque game.
OK, merci. C'était pas pour le coup parce qu'on a déjà Moncton High.
Non, c'est vraiment juste pour appuyer l'équipe.
No, it's just to support the Patriots and their team.
C'est tout?
C'est tout, monsieur.
And that's it. Want to congratulate all good comments, good points were made, very interesting. Thank you. Second round, Councillor Cormier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On nous en parle une suggestion de peut-être aller de l'avant avec la
we suggested that with with tax for when people stay in hotels, is there something here? No, we haven't added anything. There's no tax. See, a tax was required. That tax would be collected in 2024 season and budgeted for 2025. But always 1 year of collection, planning, and the expensive after 2025. Does that answer your question? Yes, it does. Thank you. It makes sense. So as they say, stay tuned. He's talked about 5 employees. One employee was not in the flow chart. I know you want 5. You explained what you wanted. You mentioned that one had not been recruited in 2023. Are there others in your flow chart that will go to the exception that you had not gotten? There's 5 new ones. And the superintendent of facilities approved last year, but had not been added to the budget. We could never find them. And then 2 vacant positions, the communications officer and we're still in transition. Marcella is trying to a new job. If he does, we'll have to replace her. We're in the transition with one of our employees, so it'll be 2 vacant positions at this time. A comment on the toilets that are breaking down regularly. Well, they took it down once last fall. I wanted to suggest, I don't know if it's expensive. There are toilets that exist, especially in Florida. They are stainless steel toilets. It's probably extremely expensive, but perhaps it would be worth the cost. If you want to wait in March, I'll send you a picture of that. That's a normal. Okay. It's got a sink beside it.
OK. Non, mais des toilettes sont chauffées, là. Moi, dans ce cas, j'ai vu des toilettes.
The only way I saw stainless steel is they're in prisons, but you have to. In those cases, you have to get out somewhat.
Je vais revenir sur le commentaire de la caserne de la rémunération des pompiers que je
and come back to the wages for volunteer. Il y a 2 gros projets qu'on va. Il y a 2 big projects. I'll certainly vote on them. The barracks and the ladder truck, maybe 10 million, 11 million. I think we have to treat employees properly. I think Colette Boudreau, the councillor, mentioned at one point, councillor, she's vice mayor, anyway, they're just semantics. She mentioned that citizens in art people don't know. I would like for somebody to explain to me. They tell us there's grants for people that use the rink, the skating rink, who lived in the old Shediac, had a grant if they played hockey or artistic skating. But if you come out of the old Shediac, naturally you paid the full price. Is that in the budget somewhere?
On l'a pas mis cette année.
The reason with the amalgamation, everybody's equal, everybody is going to pay a registration fee, and not have there'll be the return for the use of the arena. So we didn't put it in there. So how much was that? The grant per person? It was just for the arena, just for the sports in the arena. There's an amount for minor hockey, and if you're a young person was dancing or swimming or whatever, you had access to $100, or if you went outside of the province. So that's not a different, that's a different program. It's a different program. So what you're questioning is the use of the rink at the arena. And we treat everybody equal. So we get nothing. But if you play badminton, you give him 100. What's the program?
C'est une politique qui avait été mise en place pour n'importe quel jeune qui vont à l'extérieur de la province.
Policy was put together for people that go out. Is it maybe there was a program?
I didn't think it applied to hockey. I thought it applied to the other sports. People who are competing elsewhere could ask for $100 contribution from the municipality. Thanks for the clarification, because there were different policies that at the public meeting in Skoduk wanted to inform the citizens of the fact that did exist, and that didn't want to tell them it did if it didn't. Thank you. We don't want to have to write a lot of checks if it is a shared service, so it comes out of everybody's tax. That's right. Everybody pays for the arena, so everybody pays the same amount. That's right. Thanks. Councillor O'Brien? Thank you. I wrote the questions down so I wouldn't forget them. To answer Jean-Claude's question, third employee for the fire hall. Status quo. That's working really well. So far, we have 2 full-time employees. So the fire chief, they're answering calls. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Fire chief was there for administration. Joel, he's mainly on fire prevention. There's a lot of maintenance, a lot of equipment maintenance that has to be done at the fire hall. So that's where we're bringing in our third person to work on that. The day that we need a third person, they will need 10 more, because that means we'll need full-time firefighters. That's why the second floor of the fire hall is being left alone, is because we need room for all of the things that the fire hall will need. Once the third comes in, that means that we've got a full-time. We're going to have a lot more full-timers, people on staff, but for the time being, so all is good. Thank you for the clarification. The other thing, the wish list is that what's happening. People are. There's no real wish list that exists for equipment, but for firefighter salaries, that would be good. But there are 45 firefighters who do up from 450 to 500 calls per year, and they have a very small amount of money for that. That's the real need. What we've asked for is This is not pie in the sky at all. And that's right. Well, yes, they did indeed go out, and they are not well paid for that work. I have confidence in Victor that they're going to do that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Marie Lloyd.
You know, I've been listening, and I'd say 65% of our discussion has been on expenses. We want more. New toilet, new sidewalks. I can get you one.
There you go.
Anyways, my point is this. I think we seriously have to look at being more aggressive in revenues. We cannot do these things without increased revenues. And we have two options. We can increase taxes, we can increase water funds, or miscellaneous stuff. We have to look and be more creative in our ways to get revenues. And the way I see we've been going with opportunities to develop revenues, we're missing it. So I strongly think that we as a council have to look at revenues as the option to obtain our expenses. I agree with you, Peter. Sidewalks, I can't get sidewalks in my area. It's impossible because I'm all provincial highway. So it's a tremendous idea. Tremendous idea to have more and more fire protection. But holy geez, you're talking about a lot of money.
At some point, yes.
So we got to get that money. And how are we going to get it? Because I'm not saying anymore.
Sounds good. Thank you. Well, we're 15 minutes, actually 14 minutes before our time allotted is done. Unless you wanted to continue.
No.
Parce qu'il reste les projets capitaux, on va aborder ça demain.
Because we're going to talk about capital, right? That's capital projects that we're going to cover tomorrow. That's a water fund. Right. So then adjournment is proposed by Germain Galland. Moved, that is. Of course, that originally, earlier in the meeting, it was. That's the end of the show for this evening. Interpreter wants to also mention mistake that I made earlier on, which was the fountain is the monument to the naval infantry.